saw in 1 week in Instagram, I reached almost 500 million people. I think it was like 446 million people.
His most loved and hated man, Dan Bilzerian.
Dan Bilzerian, everyone's least favorite playboy, has been exposed many times.
I mean, I won 10 and a half and another night. I beat another guy for 10. I just distinctly remember because I won like 11 million bucks.
Dan, you've lost 1 million followers in the last 12 months.
Dan Bilzerian just lost everything.
Dan Bilzerian was once painted as the ultimate face of America's over-the-top luxury life, living in a jaw-dropping multi-million-dollar mansion, cruising around in rare supercars, partying on massive yachts, and always surrounded by a lineup of beautiful women like they were part of the furniture. He built his throne on Instagram with over 30 million followers, bragged about being a self-made millionaire worth around $200 million, and sold the fantasy of being a poker legend who supposedly pocketed $10.8 million in a single night. For a lot of people, his life looked like the ultimate American dream. But just like that, the whole thing started to crumble. Every flashy post, every so-called real moment was nothing but a carefully scripted act.
Bilzerian actually at poker.
Where did Dan get his money from?
How, you may ask, does this billionaire playboy
Have won over $50 million in 1 year of playing poker.
He's the son of convicted corporate fraudster Paul Bilzerian.
The trust fund Ponzi scheme inheriting pseudo-commando wannabe Kirkland Brand.
The whole self-made millionaire aura? Yeah, turns out that was pure theater. The flashy fortune? Tied to a daddy with a messy legal past. And the so-called Ignite Empire? Just a hollow brand that bled money faster than it made any. So how did this poker genius go from the peak of internet fame to being exposed as nothing more than a spoiled trust fund kid playing king until the curtain came crashing down? Let's pull that curtain back. Dan Bilzerian's rise to becoming Instagram's self-proclaimed king started in the early 2010s, when he realized exactly how to turn the platform into his own personal movie set. Every photo wasn't just a random snapshot, it was a production. You'd see him beard sharp flexing on the deck of a multi-million-dollar yacht, or tossing wads of cash out of a helicopter, or firing off massive guns in the Nevada desert, or throwing these insane parties packed with models, champagne spraying everywhere, fireworks exploding overhead. Every single frame was engineered to scream, alpha male, untouchable, living the dream. He wasn't just posting pictures, he was selling a story. The legend of a brilliant poker player turned self-made mogul who built a $100 million empire from scratch. And for a while, it worked. Guys across the world didn't just envy him, they worshipped him. No 9 to 5, no rules, just brains, balls, and a bit of luck. That's the fantasy he sold, and he knew how to keep them hooked, replying to fans, kind relatable moments like casual poker games with friends, and dropping little bits of life advice to make it seem like you could be him if you wanted it bad enough. Comments poured in. This man is living the dream. Dan, teach me the ways. But the longer he kept up this picture-perfect act, the more cracks started to show. Little inconsistencies people ignored at first began to feel suspicious. Discussions started bubbling up online. Was this guy really the poker god he claimed to be? Or was there something he wasn't telling us? And then the digging started. Old stories, old records, whispers about his dad's legal trouble, all coming back into the spotlight. That perfect image he built, it started to look fake. What began as small doubts turned into a storm of accusations that tore apart the alpha male character he'd been playing. See, Dan swore up and down his money came from crushing high-stakes poker games, boasting about winning tens of millions in a single night. But the actual poker world? They weren't buying it. Forums like Reddit and X started tearing through his history, pointing out that the big wins he bragged about either had no proof or didn't happen the way he said. And in the poker scene, when you can't back your brag with receipts, your credibility is toast.
People say, oh, what's that big poker player's name, Dan Bilzerian? And I get a little annoyed because he most certainly did not make all of his money from...
Then came the viral post on X that blew the lid open. Shared thousands of times, blunt as ever. Dan Bilzerian hasn't won a single major poker game, so where's the money coming from? That one question was like tossing gasoline on a fire. Curiosity spread fast, and suddenly the public and the media were in full detective mode. Big outlets like Forbes and the Wall Street Journal started poking around, dissecting every part of Dan's flashy life, the massive Los Angeles mansion, the garage full of rare supercars, the endless private jet trips, the champagne rivers at his parties. Then the receipts started surfacing. A $75,000 custom paintball arena, a $31,000 Star Wars gun collection. Numbers so ridiculous they made people laugh. No normal poker player could spend like that unless they had some kind of secret gold mine. Online forums lit up. Comments rolled in like, this guy's lifestyle makes zero sense unless daddy's bankroll is behind it. And over on YouTube, investigators like CoffeeZilla dropped deep dive videos pulling millions of views.
All his money from poker when in fact he's just a trust fund baby from a dad who was accused of fraud and thrown in jail for being a corporate raider in the 80s. The dad was fined by the SEC millions of dollars. He hid all the money in trust funds and shell companies
all circling back to the same question. If not poker, then what's the real source? The trail led straight to one name, Paul Bilzerian, Dan's father, a Wall Street troublemaker from the 1980s who made headlines for shaking up the U.S. stock market, and not exactly in the most legal way.
Your father was a corporate takeover specialist. He went to jail for his business practice.
Digging into the SEC records painted a completely different picture of Paul Bilzerian. Nothing like the self-made business genius Dan liked to brag about. Instead, he was infamous for playing dirty in the stock market. This guy was pulling moves like stock parking, secretly buying shares through middlemen to hide his name and mess with prices, and greenmail, basically threatening to take over companies just so they'd panic and buy him out for way more than the stock was worth. Shady or genius, depending on who you ask, but it made him tens of millions. The problem? The SEC wasn't impressed. They slapped him with a $180 million debt that's been hanging over his head for over 30 years. And here's where it gets even more infuriating. After getting arrested and declaring bankruptcy, Paul still lived like a king. We're talking about a 28,000 square foot Florida mega mansion, while the SEC was still chasing the remaining $62 million he owed. It's like he was laughing in their faces.
The mansion only cost them several million. So where did the rest go? Roughly $50 million had to go somewhere, and that's where Dan comes in.
It didn't take long for investigators to find the missing link. Paul Bilzerian had quietly shuffled assets overseas into shady trusts and tax havens like the Cook Islands. According to the SEC, these offshore setups were the hidden pipeline funding Dan's insane spending sprees. And once that came out, self-made millionaire image collapsed like a cheap card table. On X, Dan Bilzerian exposed started trending. Memes tore him apart, calling him a trust fund kid living on dirty money, and comments mocking him as not the king of Instagram, just his father's puppet. The pile-on hit full force in 2020 when the SEC went after Ignite, the vape and cannabis company Dan ran as CEO, accusing it of cooking the books to pump up stock prices. Audits showed the sales were fake, deals with phantom companies that didn't even exist. And guess who they suspected was behind these ghost clients? Paul Bilzerian. That lawsuit ripped off whatever was left of Dan's golden boy image, linking him directly to his dad's crooked playbook. The fan base that once worshipped him now roasted him daily, and tried to fight back on Instagram and X, claiming he built it all from nothing and whining about media hit jobs. He even filed a $50 million lawsuit against his own dad for misusing his image.
Social media star and Las Vegas resident Dan Bilzerian is known for his lavish lifestyle and has been called the king of Instagram. But now he's taking his father to court.
He's also had extensive financial support from his father over the years, and now he's suing his dad and others in federal court here in Las Vegas, claiming that they pushed him out of a company he founded and have tried to thwart his new business ventures.
But instead of making him look like a victim, it blew up in his face, because the court documents laid out exactly how tangled his finances were with Paul's. The internet had a field day. Dan suing his dad? That's rich. Who's paying the lawyers? Him or daddy? From idol to internet punchline, the fall was brutal. But instead of owning up or cleaning house, Dan pulled the oldest influencer move in the book, reinvent himself with a brand new hustle. Cue Sigma Society, an online dating course he swore would turn any man into a chick magnet without needing looks or money. The irony? His entire Instagram brand, ripped abs, exotic trips, surrounded by paid models, screamed the exact opposite. But he sold it hard. Using the same alpha persona that made him famous, he targeted guys who felt invisible and promised them the keys to confidence, attraction, and status. The price tag? $200 a month for the basic package, apparently marked down from a supposed $4,000 to make you feel like you were robbing him blind. And if you made over $100,000 a year, you could book one-on-one exclusive calls with Dan himself, a fancy perk that, according to past buyers, was just him flexing and talking about himself. The course promised all the secrets to winning over women without wealth, but in interviews, Dan had openly admitted money made him 100 times more attractive.
And it's like, I've been doing this for 10 years. Like, I was famous for being rich. Like,
the contradiction couldn't have been more obvious, and the cracks showed fast. On Reddit and X, frustrated customers complained the advice was vague, recycled stuff you could find for free. I spent $200 to learn how to talk to women, and all Dan said was, be confident like me. Critics labeled it exactly what it was, a high-priced illusion aimed at insecure men already hypnotized by Dan's fake alpha lifestyle. Others said it outright. Dan's not selling skills, he's selling the fantasy of his own life, which isn't even real. And when you put Sigma Society next to Ignite's implosion, the pattern was impossible to ignore. People had already noticed that a lot of Dan's wild spending, pool makeovers, custom beds, ping pong courts, yacht rentals, was paid for with company money. When Ignite tanked, he needed a new cash flow to keep the champagne flowing. Dating courses were dirt cheap to make and insanely profitable to sell, but the playbook was all too familiar. His dad rigged the stock market with green mail and stock parking. Dan rigged public perception by selling a fantasy he couldn't live without daddy's offshore cash. The internet summed it up perfectly. From the father's stock scams to the son's dream scams, the Bilzerians really do keep it in the family. And just like his father, Dan's schemes eventually hit a wall. Every time one hustle crumbled, he rebranded and tried again, banking on the loyalty of fans who still bought into the image. But Sigma Society exposed him more than it saved him. The no money needed pitch didn't match the reality of his parties, rented women, and trust fund safety net. People saw right through it. Former admirers became meme makers. On X, he was reduced to a caricature, the bad boy dating guru, trying to sell you the secret to being him, minus the private jet. A parody video on YouTube showing Dan on a yacht saying, "Be yourself, but have money like me," pulled millions of views. His reputation was toast. Even then, he doubled down. Still posting, still promoting Sigma Society as if it were changing lives. He brushed off questions about Ignite's missing money, claiming the media twisted the facts. But online, users shredded his rebuttals. Former course buyers called the lessons worthless, accusing him of padding the program with his own brag reels instead of actual advice. A few loyal fans defended him, but their voices were drowned out by a tidal wave of mockery. One post with tens of thousands of likes put it bluntly: Sigma Society isn't a course, it's a polished scam wrapped in Dan Bilzerian's fake glow. At this point, Sigma Society wasn't a savior. It was proof of how far the Instagram king had fallen, from idolized playboy to desperate salesman clinging to whatever was left of his brand. Dan Bilzerian's rise and fall isn't just about one guy losing his grip on fame. It's a mirror for how easily people get sucked into an illusion. For years, Dan's world, the yachts, cars, the women, looked like the ultimate dream. But when the smoke cleared, all that was left was manipulation, borrowed wealth, and a mask that couldn't stay on forever. The takeaway? Real success doesn't need smoke and mirrors. If you have to fake your life to get recognition, that recognition is worthless. And in today's world, where every feed is a highlight reel, and every influencer is their own PR team, the line between reality and fiction is razor thin. Don't get fooled by the glow. Your worth isn't in followers or flashy posts. It's in what you do and who you are when nobody's watching.